up and empty the clip, baby. Welcome back to Empty the Clip, the no bullshit revenue podcast for B2B executives and revenue leaders who actually want to win in 2024 specifically, because next year's tactics will be next year's tactics and this year's tactics are this year's tactics. And last year's tactics are last year's tactics. So people that keep peddling that shit need to stop. Welcome into the show. I am your host, JJ Russell. Joining me, the leader of the Dad Gang and sponsor for Muscle Milk, Joey Gilkey.
This is Fair Life Core Power. Muscle Milk tastes like ass.
It really does. Have you tasted
42 grams of protein. I'm on this high protein diet right now, which is great, by the way. I can eat out all I want and eat steak every time. It's great. I eat steak 5 days a week.
Wow.
Right now. Yep.
You should grow cows.
I had cows, but we're gonna have horses on the farm soon. We're gonna have goats. We've talked about getting 2 alpacas, and then we'll get cows.
When one goes all in on farm animals, do you like acquire one at a time, or do you just go balls to the wall and like get a bunch of them?
You know me, so you know the answer to how I will operate.
Yeah.
If it's a legitimate business someone's trying to run, they're probably acquiring at scale to some degree. They go to these auctions, they'll go buy like 4, 5, 6 cows at a time. Horses are hella expensive. So horses can be and often need to be by themselves, or not by themselves, but like you can buy them singular. Goats, alpacas need to be bought typically in pairs because they can get lonely, which is real sad. But depends on the species.
Nice. Oh, I love it, dude. Well, I'm looking forward to your farm as you acquire all the animals.
Thanks, man.
I'll bring my kids over. Well, today
hella expensive endeavor. So
yeah, they are. That's all right.
It's beautiful to look at,
man.
Yeah. If you got an extra couple 6 figures laying around, you can have your farm too. A year. It's just that much to take care of.
One day. We've tried to theme episodes. The theme of today's episode, it's a little bit tongue in cheek because it's the phrase that you always used to say, but it will just become our battle cry today. Rockstar sales process over rockstar salespeople, but I just called it rockstar sales process. Baby. So out the gate, let's start with that premise, and I want to hear you talk through it. That a rockstar sales process is more significant or more important than a rockstar salesperson. Mm-hmm. Do you still believe that that's true? If so, why?
Oh, more than ever. Now let me caveat with what is a process. Do not equate process with system, and do not equate system or process with technology, right? So we tend to make this mistake where we believe if we get a specific tool that it's going to help our sales process. No, a sales process, as I see it, is oftentimes can be one of 2 things. One is it can be a guiding framework type of process, or it can be a step-by-step, consider like a check off the box per step kind of thing. And there's different conditional logic based off of if you do this one, then you can do the next thing.
Sure.
So I tend to like to operate, and our business operates with both, right? But when it comes to sales, what I like to look at is it's more like guardrails on a highway. Now, guardrails on a highway serve one purpose, which is to ensure that you don't get off the highway. And the highway exists for you to go in a specific direction towards a specific destination. Now, the reason it's guardrails and it's not a specific lane is because I believe that if you are hiring good salespeople into a process that allows them to be somewhat uniquely them, but with like parameters and guardrails on it, intuition and discernment in the sales rep, again, process over people does not mean that people aren't important. It just means process is more important.
Yeah.
And so the reason I say guardrails is if you have good sales reps and you help them develop through repetition, through training, through coaching, through management, through leadership, you help them develop that intuition, that discernment. You want them to be able to pick their lane and pick their speed based off that intuition. How is this prospect operating? How is this deal going? Right? Pick your lane, pick your speed, but the guardrails keep you on the highway. And so that's the way I look at it. When it comes to people, right? Like the process has to be trained and drilled into their minds. The reason I love process over people is because people are somewhat transient in sales, right? Like we know that SDRs have an 18-month churn. AEs, they have a longer retention or a longer tenure, but the challenge still is their people. And so the reason I like a process is, one, if I lose people, I can slot another person into the same process that I know works. That's one thing. Two, if you do things that are measurable, which a process is measurable, then you can find out where the leaks, the holes, the obstacles are for that particular outcome you're looking for a process to drive. That's how I look at it. Yep.
Yeah, no, I actually really like that a lot.
Thank you.
So one anecdote to that, and it's something that I wanted to get into here next, is, or one example of that would be like an FTA framework. So you mentioned like guardrails, not super or so rigid that you can't operate within those guardrails. One way that I've heard you describe it is the best discovery or first time appointment framework is like a skeleton, not a cage. Right. Yes. So it gives you that roadmap. It helps you stay on track. It helps you accomplish core objectives within that conversation, but it's not holding that sales rep so tight that they're not able to leverage their intuition or speed up, slow down.
Guardrails.
What? Guardrail. It's like a guardrail.
It's like guardrails.
But so what are, not just identifying the importance of an FTA or discovery process or framework, but then really trying to get into what are those core elements that make it solid, make it operate or function effectively. What are the core tenets?
Yeah, I mean, so here's ours. I'll literally tell you our framework in it. The first half of my FTA framework has been the same since the beginning of time for me. But what has changed typically is what leads to the pitch, what leads to the next step. And that changes product by product, service by service. But our framework tends to be, it starts off, here's the literal framework. It goes, sorry, I'm getting a phone call. Dude, I hate freaking Apple Watch. I only wear this because I'm currently on 75 hard and I have to work out and walk a substantial amount. So ours goes rapport, agenda, discovery, past, present, future, qualification, fork, and then it gets into change, pain, what are people doing that's not going to work, what should you do, what do we do, how do we do it, close for the next call or next step or next transactional pivotal point in the sales process. So I'll kind of break all those down very briefly. Rapport, my whole thing is like crack a smile. Like get the prospect to crack a smile in the first minute or two. You got to realize that when you are selling to the humans behind the title, right? So it's not just a CEO or a CRO or a VP of or a C whatever. They are human beings that when they check out at 5:36, they go home, their dads, their wives, their husbands, or their husbands. Wow, I just did out of order. Husbands, fathers, wives, mothers, friends, so on. And so they have humanity just like all of us. It's the one thing we have in common. And so is there a way that I can crack a smile and lower the guard even just slightly? Then I go into agenda, which is not like a bullet point by bullet point. This is what we are going to talk about, but it's a more organic, right? So, hey, so how these calls typically go. And then you go into, I'm going to ask you a little bit about past, present, future. Where have you been? Where are you at? Where do you want to go? I might ask some probing questions just to make sure I have a little bit more of an understanding of the landscape. After that, I'm going to have a pretty good idea if this is worth continuing or not, right? If it's not, we'll shake hands. We'll have new friends that we've met, but I can point you in a better direction or tell you we can't help. But if I do believe we can help, which I hope that's the case, then I'm going to kind of talk about what that looks like, educate you a little bit on the market, talk about some problems, so on. Does that make sense to you? Is that good? Great. Okay. That's agenda. Then there is disco / past, present, future, and qualification, right? It's all kind of wrapped up into one. The disco portion is to identify, can we even sell to these people, right? Can we help them? Is there a problem worth solving here? I call it past, present, future because I think it's a great way to frame the understanding of their business. And so I'll say like, okay, so past, present, future is understanding what have you guys done? Where have you guys tried? Where's failed? Where has succeeded? Present, where are you guys at today, right? Why are you even here in the first place? And then most importantly, future, where do you guys want to go? Because that's the only place that I get to play a role in is your future. It's a nice little line I like to throw in there. And then from there, we go into qualification, which I don't tell them I'm going to qualify them, but what I'll say is, I'm going to ask a few probing questions to understand a little bit more. That's what you can ask a little bit more of like, hey, LTV, CAC, how big is your total addressable market, that kind of stuff. At that point, then there's a fork. The fork is move them up, move them out. If they're qualified and worth continuing the conversation, going into the pitch type of portion, then move them forward. It's not like a moment in time you tell them. It's just it's a decision you make. If they're not qualified, then say, hey, great, hey, just based on this, like, I want to be realistic. I want to save your time here. I don't think we're the best solution. I think you should do this, or this. Be helpful. Or just say, hey, I want to give you a few minutes back because I don't want to both spend time on this. Then you go into change, pain, etc. Right? So this is part of education. What is a change in the marketplace that is causing a threat to your organization but is also an opportunity if you can solve for it? Then it's pain. What is that causing for you? Right? Not just what is the change and what is the threat, but what is the outcome of falling prey to that change or that threat? And then we get into, companies are trying this, right, to solve for this. Here's why that doesn't work. And ideally that maps to something that is something they're probably trying or have thought about trying, so on, right? So in our case, it might be outsourcing to an SDR company, or hiring an expensive VP of sales, or implementing some new technology because you think that's your savior. So explaining that. And then you get into kind of the final parts. It's like, okay, great. Well, here's how we help solve for that differently. And then you get into, here's what we do. Here's how we do it. Give them a process like, hey, this is a very prescriptive process for us to get the result you want. And then you finish it with a close. How do you then close them into whether it's the next call, the next step, a proposal, an actual, signed, sealed, delivered deal, so on. That's the framework.
Okay, I got 2 questions. I'm trying to figure out which one's most exciting to ask. So,
by the way, if you're listening to this, go back, listen to that 5 times, and write it down.
You should do that. And if you're listening to this and Joey sounds incredibly average, you should actually be impressed, because he's not on a fancy podcast mic. He is on a headset, a salesperson headset in his sales cockpit. I think you've promoted that one, not a sponsor, Boomstick. Is that right?
Yeah, it's Boomstick. It was actually branded and named. They worked with Headset Advisor with Ryan Reisert. That's what he named it.
Yeah.
So.
You sound great. I was just thinking about the fact that, like, we're running a podcast and you're using a sales headset.
Well, unfortunately, I'm about to get fancy. As you know, I've always had a podcast studio, whether it be at my house or at an office building. And we have a 4,200 square foot, beautiful downtown exposed brick office for our sales team. And I'm building on a podcast studio. So I will sell out and be fancy at some point.
That's all right. No, I love it. And yes, you should go back and listen to that 5 times because it's smart. Go do it. Don't just listen to it and get fat on information. Do something with it. All right. I'll give you the choice. Do you want to talk? Because you mentioned, like, walking people through how we work with people like you, or what the sales process would look like. So proven process, buyer's journey, whatever you want to call it, right? We could go that route. Or we could go back to discovery framework and talk through, do you believe in pitch decks or not?
Let's hit that real quick. So let's hit the latter. I have historically not been a sales asset pitch deck kind of guy. That has changed over the years for a couple of reasons. And it does not mean that it is gospel. It does not mean that this is the only way to skin the cat. Poor cat. But by the way, we say, as Americans, we say the stupidest things, right? Like, beat a dead horse, skin a cat. like, man, we are a pretty morbid group of people. Anyways.
Hey, real quick, I learned this Sunday that rise and shine is a verse in Isaiah.
Is it really?
I think it's Isaiah 53 or 60. It's Isaiah 60. Yeah.
I thought it was like a reference to, like, sunning your balls, which is like a cool thing now, I guess.
No, man, it's in the Bible.
So my philosophy has not changed, but I have changed in the sense that I have gone more upstream. As you know, we work with emerging companies. We work with mid-market. We work with enterprise. We've got logos that you guys all would know. They tend to respond better to a deck of some sort, right? Statistics, numbers, helping walk to that change, pain, so on. So I find that helpful to facilitate the conversation. Now, you need to be willing to shut the slides, be intuitive, right? We talk back to intuition and discernment. Realize when it makes sense to stop sharing that and have a conversation, asking questions throughout, so on. So I do like the slide deck for that. what I like it for the most is if you're building out a sales org that is meant to scale, right? Our goal is to be at 50 million here by the end of 2025. The only way that you can do that is to have fairly repeatable sales process with a lot of sales reps. And so though slide decks maybe are not as organic, and I, without a slide deck, am going to outperform someone with a slide deck all day long. I'm also the CEO. I have a lot more trust built in. I've been selling a lot longer. I've sold very, very large deals at scale. So you cannot expect an account executive or anyone who's a seller closing business to necessarily be able to do what I can do. And that's not a toot my own horn, it's just reality. But if you want to scale an organization, you need to get the pitch pretty tight. So it's repeatable, right? And it's transferable. And when you bring somebody in, they have something tangible to follow and look at, and it's good, right? Simultaneously to having a process, right? You know where you start to lose people, so you can always change the slide deck, right? If you're like, we keep losing attention when we talk about the pain. Well, the pain may not be relevant in our slide deck, so maybe we should change the pain in the slide deck. Because that's where we're starting to lose people in the conversation. So I think if you're selling to more sophisticated buyers and you are also trying to scale a sales organization, I think, in my personal opinion, I think that the slide deck and or assets is valuable.
Let me tell you though what that slide deck should not have on it, and what we see all the time when we get in and work with companies. It should not be a deck full of features and pricing.
Yeah, I think, and I've worked substantially in like the marketing agency, software development space. They tend to like to have what they call a capes deck, right? Capabilities, all of the things that we can do, right?
Yes.
No one gives a shit about what you can do if they don't realize how all that applies to their business, their problems, their goals, and so on. And so your deck should be able to lead them through a story of the market, right? Change, what that means for them, what that if they fall prey to it, what that's going to then become for them pain wise, that they're probably already feeling. Maybe if they're not, then they need to be aware of that. And then it needs to move into solution, right? And only for a little bit do you talk about features and benefits. Now, can you talk about features and benefits later in the sales process? Of course, you should. You need to. They need to know what the deliverables are and what they're buying. But more than anything, people care about the pain they're feeling and how they can stop that pain from existing.
It is almost like your deck should be a clear representation of gap selling. Shout out Keenan. Who's going to be on a podcast, baby.
That's right.
Let's get him in here. We'll get him in here soon. I like, present state, current issues, dream outcome. Here's how we're going to get you there. Here's how we'll look to get you there.
Yep.
All right. I love that. So backing up to the fork in the road in this conversation, the other option of things we could talk about would be this prescriptive process through the buyer's journey. Hey, we're here, right? So in this first time appointment, we're here. Here's what it looks like to walk through our sales process, which I think a lot of people have a proven process documented around their delivery.
Yep.
I think most sales orgs do a pretty terrible job of helping to white glove, hand in hand, walk their process or walk their prospect through their sales process and have very clearly defined stages and outcomes of each stage. I think maybe talking through ours and just the overall importance of having something like that would be most beneficial.
Yeah, 100%. We'll talk about it from a theoretical perspective first. So nobody likes to guess. Nobody likes to wonder what's next. Where, I think one thing that's very frustrating about, let's just take software companies, for example.
Sure.
Let's take even like inbound processes. It's very frustrating to show up to a website, look at all the things, make a decision for myself. This seems interesting to discover or to kind of do some discovery around. To then go to the pricing page that tells us the things we get, but doesn't tell us the pricing. And so they force us into a call. Well, then when they force us into a call, they don't even let us book directly on the calendar. They make us do like a fairly thorough application, or worse, not a thorough application. It takes hours, days, hopefully not weeks, but sometimes for a sales development rep to show up and say, hey, let's schedule a call. Makes sense. You show up, you spend 10 minutes with them, you realize they can't even answer your questions. And they're like, okay, well, we're going to put you on a call with an AE. Then it takes another couple of days. And once the next couple of days go through, then we're in this place where it's like, all right, well, I'm finally talking to someone 10 days into this, right? And you lose people, right? And so part of that is like, I'm just not clear on what this process is going to be. So no one likes to guess. I will lose interest if I don't know what the journey to the destination looks like. The destination is I want to solve this problem and I'm potentially willing to buy. So that's one thing. How we do it is, a little bit unique, but I don't think it needs to be, is just like everybody, we do discovery. And then after that, we put some pen to paper and we start talking about the potential future, right? So we have what we call the math of sales call, a very, very data-driven calculator that really helps us work through your numbers, your goals, reverse engineering that. If at that point it makes sense to continue and you like the numbers you're seeing, and or you don't like the numbers that you're seeing without us, right? Because we're going to show you both. Then the next step is to jump into what we might call a foot in the door, right? Our first offer.
Yep.
Once they get into our foot in the door, it's a 6-week project for us to go through. When they go through the 6-week project, we talked about the goal of that 6 weeks is for us to not just make assumptions with your math of sales, but let's actually plug in your real numbers to the math of sales, so that we can actually reverse engineer your goals with your numbers, not just averages. Because as you know, averages is an average, which means there's a standard deviation that's worse than, there's a standard deviation that's better than. And so we have to go from assumptions to hard facts. Once we have hard facts, we feel really good or not good about moving forward at this particular, terms of engagement. And then you have a decision to make. Once we do the math of sales, once we've gone to market, we got your numbers, then we feel good about saying, hey, based on that, we propose that it needs to look like this. And then it's commitment stage. At that point, you got to commit to us long-term or whatever our terms might be, and then make a decision.
What I really like about having that multi-stage process as clearly defined as we do is every stage has closing actions and outcomes that have to happen, right? So the closing action from the discovery call is get them into math of sales, see if it makes sense.
Yep.
The closing action from math of sales is get them into outbound R&D, see if that makes sense. And I think a lot of times people are like, well, let's get them from discovery into like proposal, but then proposal could be like a 6-week process or a multi-conversation process. It's just, and the prospects off kilter, they don't know what to expect, and neither does the sales rep. So,
well, I think it comes back to, we have to teach buyers how to buy, right? That's a challenger sale principle 1, right? Is educate buyers and maybe even change their perspective on how they've historically bought. Right, I'll give you a good example of insurance, right? Because we all know, we've all bought it. In insurance, we tend to just look at coverage for costs, right? I get $1 million in coverage and I pay this much for that. And so therefore, how I've historically learned how to buy is I'm going to go get a bunch of quotes. I'm going to choose the cheapest one. We're going to rock with it, right? Well, if I was a consultative seller in insurance, what I need to actually do with that person is to help them understand the change in the market, the pain of your risk exposure as a homeowner, as a business owner, as an asset owner. And then from there, I need to help educate them on why it might make sense to pay a little bit more or why it might make sense to have different coverage than you think you need. And then I move them into our process, right? You have to educate the buyer on how they're supposed to buy, not necessarily on how they've historically bought.
Yeah. Yeah. And that turns the corner into value-based pricing versus pricing just based on cost or budget. Awesome. Well, we've got proprietary ways that we do that. We've got ways that we help our clients facilitate those actions. But we only do it with people that come in and have a conversation and work with Apex Revenue. It's the first step is not us trying to box you in a corner and sell you anything. It is discovery, and then it's math of sales, just like Joey said. Joey, where can people learn more about Apex Revenue?
Well, we've made this very easy. It's apexrevenue.com.
Shocking.
Yeah, so go to apexrevenue.com. Our homepage does a pretty good job of explaining what we do, how we work. Your next step is nothing more than a discovery. Like I said, if it's not a good fit within the first 10 minutes, we'll fork you out or fork you up. Fork you. And then if it makes sense, we'll go into another call, a low lift, but very educational, math to sales. If that makes sense, we'll pull you a nap on R&D, which is you're not committing to jumping in bed with us, but you're committing to getting some answers in a 6-week period or less. And then from there, you can make the decision on whether it makes sense to work with us long term.
Bang. Okay, Joey. So rockstar sales process. I'm going to deviate just a little bit into rockstar process period. So not necessarily specifically for sales, but we've got a lot of executives, CEOs, business leaders, operators who are listening to the show or who have historically listened to our show. And I think that you've actually got a lot of processes that you leverage, for yourself personally, that make you one of the most highly efficient human beings that I've ever been around. Like you move very quickly from one thing to the next. You have ways of cataloging and executing on just about everything. And so there's a few frameworks that I want to get into, but the overall, bucket for this stuff is just optimizing your time. How do you think about optimizing your time? If you could give it to 1,000 things, what's your system and framework for figuring out where to assign it?
I love how I do this, where I always start philosophical and then I move into it.
Yes.
Philosophically, I think you have to understand that time is somewhat of a concept. Learned this from Townsend Wardlaw, but time is a concept, and you can bend time if you properly leverage what you do in that time. And so there is an importance in understanding what you do with that time and the value that is attributed to it. And so we can all agree that there are aspects of our life that are more valuable for us to spend our time on, right? So an example, I find it more valuable to be investing in my wife and kids than to be cooking dinner, helping with cleaning, whatever, right? So on the farm, we have a chef who does our meals. We have nannies who will help our kids and give my wife some time to do some other stuff to take care of herself. We have cleaners that do stuff, and I have an assistant who helps kind of with like farm management, if you will. Those are all important things, but if I look at my hourly rate, right? And I'm not afraid to share some numbers, but I made 7 figures last year of personal income. If I break that down to an hourly rate, right? Let's just say it was $1 million. It's more than that, but let's just say it was $1 million. Then my hourly rate's $500 for me. So from a production perspective, my time, my hour, literally is worth $500. And so, if I spend time, let's just take cleaning my house, but I could get a cleaner that could work for $60 an hour, I just made $440 to spend that $60 for someone else to do that work. Okay. So because I value my time, because I value, not just that I value my time, but because I know my time is worth something to me, to my business, and to my family, I owe it to them to spend my time most efficiently, most effectively. And so if that's the case, you have to look at the things that you are doing, and you have to put a rough dollar figure on, is that actually worth doing or is it not? If it's not worth doing, don't do it at all. If it's worth doing, but it's not worth you doing, then you need to delegate that. And if it's worth doing because the value maps to your hourly rate or whatever your time is worth, then you should probably be spending your time there. So it really comes down to bucketing and blocking off what is important and what is not important. I've created somewhat over the years. I've been using it since probably 2016, this thing that I kind of created called ODD, ODD, which stands for Optimize, Delegate, and Delete, right?
Ooh, IP, baby.
IP,
or
baby.
Maybe, I don't know.
It is IP technically, but every IP is a derivative of someone else's IP, I'm sure. But what ODD really is it is a practice where I look at the things that are in my life, the things that I have to do, the responsibilities that fall underneath my tutelage, if you will. I hope that's the right word.
I don't think it is.
I don't know. But if you were to look at it, and I'm sure you all are aware of quadrants, right? If you have an x-axis and a y-axis that kind of goes infinity in both directions, vertically and horizontally. And on one axis is value, right? A dollar figure value. And on the other is time spent. What I would like to do is understand, if I were to basically make a big list of everything that I do that falls under my tutelage. And if I was to plot that on this quadrant, right? You've got your top left quadrant, which is it takes less time, because less time is better than more time, right? If it takes less time and it is of low value, that's your top left quadrant. Your bottom left quadrant is going to be, it is of low value and it takes more time. Well, your bottom right quadrant then is, it's high value, but it takes more time. And then your top right quadrant is, it is high value and it takes less time, right? So you can think about in that order or reverse order, your top right quadrant is your most valuable, right? Less time, most value, best bang for your buck. Your bottom right quadrant is high value, but takes more time, a little bit less than the top one. Your third valuable quadrant is, it is not a high dollar figure value-wise, but it doesn't take much time. And then your time suck, worst quadrant you can spend your stuff is going to be high time, low value. And so if you were to look at all the things you do in your life and you could plot this in the quadrants that they exist, then you kind of start to see where you spend your time. And then your objective is to get rid of everything in the bottom left quadrant. Your worst, right? Most time, least value. Watching TV or whatever it might be, right? It's just not super valuable. It might take a ton of time. Video games, all that shit. So I don't have a ton of like dumb hobbies or waste time on. I haven't watched TV in years, realistically. And then
except for sports.
I watch sports, yeah, but it's usually like UFC at like 11 o'clock at night when the main card's on.
Which, let's be honest, there's value in that.
There's value in that. It's a little outlet.
Because you're
for
a man.
Me. I'm a man. I can't outsource it. But nonetheless, what you want to do is you want to look at where things are plotted, and you want to run it through this framework or this lens of ODD, optimize, delegate, delete. And so I want to look at everything on there. If I can possibly optimize something, meaning I can make it more valuable than it is with the same amount of time, or I can make it the same value but less amount of time, or even better, I can do it in less time and make more value from that thing, then optimize it if you can. If it is something that needs to be done, but it's maybe not that valuable to you, then it makes sense to delegate that thing, right? And the last part is, if it's just not valuable and it's not important, you should just delete it from your existence, right? And so you kind of want to plot on this map, and then you want to make it pretty obvious. Put a check mark by the things you just keep doing, right? You want to circle the things you can optimize. You want to put a square around the things you can delegate, and you want to put a cross through on the things that you delete. And from there, it gets pretty obvious. Like, all right, this is how I'm going to prioritize my time. I need to optimize these things. I need to delegate these things. I need to keep doing these things, and I need to delete entirely these things.
Bro, you're in the zone right now.
Thank you. It is powered by.
You're zenning.
It's powered by my zen. My nicotine habit.
Is Sam gonna send you all his now that he's zen free?
Potentially. This is high value, low time investment, top quadrant.
If we ever end up getting sponsors for the show, which I don't think we ever would, but
I would love to get Zen.
Be hilarious.
That'd be amazing.
# not a sponsor yet.
Yes. We're gonna get Zen and Core Life 42 gram core power.
It's a lot. It's a lot of protein, dude. All right. Another strategy that you use right now for maximizing your time is bucketing or time blocking.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen your calendar. I know you do it. I want to hear about how you leverage it for yourself, which would be more for like an executive leadership role, but then how have you trained sales reps to use it? Because I think that's another powerful application.
Everyone in existence needs to time block or time batch, right? And so a lot of times we tend to like put meetings on the calendar, take calls whenever, do tasks when we have time.
That's
for them.
me right now. That's me, if I'm being totally honest.
And we all go through that. Like I go through that. That's why sometimes I'm working 9 p.m. to 1 a.m., right? Because I've just poorly either I have too much on my plate and I'm not ODD'd, right? Overdosed on work. We all need to do this. And so what it essentially is instead of saying I have individual items on my calendar, you almost want to create a calendar overlay on your calendar, right? So there's a practice called Ideal Week. I think it's a Michael Hyatt practice, but Ideal Week is essentially saying you have your typical calendar, which is linked to your, name at companyname.com or whatever, where your meetings and stuff go on. But you want to have a separate calendar that overlays on top of that called Ideal Week. Now, Ideal Week is exactly what it sounds like. It is you want to put the Ideal Week on your calendar. And then ideally, your actual calendar should map to that Ideal Week. So when you look at your Ideal Week, you got to look at, okay, what do I do, right? So internal meetings, external sales calls, let's call it business development, let's call it content creation, follow-up time, etc., right? And so these are all categories that you should identify. Okay, one, how much time do I need to give to each of these categories? And then you need to try to map on your Ideal Week where do those categories go? Where do those batches go? So from 9 to 1 on Mondays, I know are my internal meetings time. So I want to stack rank as many internal meetings as possible in that time. Sales calls for me, I don't do as many these days, but I tend to like to do those usually between 1 and 4 on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So if I can set something there, I will, especially for like discoveries, right? Follow-ups can kind of fall outside of that category a little bit because they're closest to the revenue. Content creation, I want to put it block. The whole principle behind this is it's kind of comes from the principle of Cal Newport's deep work. It's when you are stopping and starting and you're constantly distracted or moving from one type of task to the next, your brain literally needs time to recalibrate to the thing that you're doing.
Yep.
And so if I answer email, now, and I keep my email open and I'm working on something and I see something come across, well, I've just now gone off of the task or the project I'm working on, shifted my mindset to email, and then I've gone back to the task or project. I have now lost effectiveness, right, on that deep work. And so the whole premise is I'm going to get more done in 3-hour block of these projects or tasks or whatever than I am if I have 3 hours blocked off in different times throughout the day for that same type of work.
Yeah. It's I think it's Giant Consulting has the 5 gears. We used that language for a little while, but getting into gear 5 is
deep work.
That is that super intentional, turn off all distractions, deep work focused on a particular set of tasks. So dude, I think I'm probably ADHD undiagnosed officially. And it's so easy for me to just like bounce from one thing to the next and never get anything done. And I'll get to the end of the day. Not that I'm not working, just nothing gets complete.
You're not ADHD. You just don't value your time like you should.
They're probably both true. They're probably both.
Yes, but I also think ADHD is overprescribed.
Oh, I don't need medicine. I just need to.
I'm not even saying overprescribed. I'm just saying like it's a prognosis or a diagnosis that far too many people fall into, and it becomes a crutch. I used to say I had ADHD too, and then as you've noted, I've become a very productive individual. A lot of it came down to I didn't value my time, and so I would spend it however it came at me, right? And kind of to that bending time, something that Townsend says, and I've only talked to Townsend for a full hour once, and it's amazing. He's a great dude. You should follow him. But he talks about like things come at you, right? And it's your job to filter those things appropriately. And unfortunately, if we don't, then either we decide how we define our time, because time is a concept, or it is decided for us and we are reactive to it.
Yeah, that's good. Damn. Well, speaking of coming at you, I might have
rather be at you than on you.
I might take the latter, I think.
What?
Depending on who it is. I don't know.
Come on you? Jesus, dude.
I don't know, man.
You never know.
What I was going to say was I might have opened up my email and I'm just seeing activated lead after activated lead after
Yeah, baby.
activated lead after booked meeting after activated lead. Dude, it's literally just like bing, bing, bing. At the end of the day is when our admins are inputting all of our clients' activated leads.
Yep.
And I'm always shocked. Like when we went through and we tallied up, we have a client that's in like their full month one right now. I think they're actually one of our bigger clients, and we outperformed every metric that we set, except for very bottom of the funnel, because we're not gonna close revenue in month one,
Yeah,
they're technically
for sure.
Yeah. So, anyways, it's just cool. It's cool to see it happen in lifetime. If that is not happening for your business and you want it to be, another shameless plug, apexrevenue.com. All right, let's end with this, Joey. So speaking of batching time, being intentional, making time work for you, not just like accepting what's flying in your face. You are taking on the 75 hard challenge. This is the second or third time that you're doing it.
Third.
How's it going? And then what was the impetus? Like, what was the reasoning? I know that like it could just be get in better shape, but was there a specific reason you wanted to do it again this year?
Yeah. So for those who aren't aware of 75 hard is essentially 75 straight days, no cheats, no fudges, no corner cuts. If you do any of those, you have to start over or quit like a little pussy. Which I have done twice now. So 75 hard is essentially you've got to work out twice a day, 45 minutes each. One has to be an indoor workout, one has to be outdoor, no matter what the elements tell you. You have to drink a gallon of water. You have to stick to a diet, hence why I'm consuming a substantial amount of protein. That's my diet, is high protein. You've got to read 10 pages a day of something that is beneficial to the mind, to the business, to the money, whatever it might be. You've got to take a progress picture every single day. And am I missing anything? I have an app that tells me everything I got to do today. So
I think that's it.
Yeah.
What do you do for your progress pictures? Do you flex? Do you pose? Do you take it in the mirror? Does your wife take it for you? What do you do?
I get butt ass naked. I'm kidding. I don't really like the progress picture every day. I'd rather do it like once a week. So I tend to just like take a picture of some random shit and put it in the app. So I'm a little bit fudging it there, but so the whole premise of it is to develop discipline to take on hard things, manufactured hard things. I've talked about this before. If life is relatively, if you're making seven figures and you're known by a bunch of people, there's a temptation to get comfortable and be somewhat lackadaisical in aspects of life. And so, as we've talked about, hard times create hard men, strong men create easy times create soft men, soft men create hard times. And so, there's a temptation to become softer with comfort. And so the way that you force yourself out of that is if things aren't hard or if they are comfortable, it is wise to manufacture difficult times. And so this is a difficult challenge. I have failed it twice, admittedly. I get to about the 30th, 35th day, and last time was an anniversary trip with my wife, and I just blew it on the trip and didn't get back on the horse. The other time was some other event that it was like a business travel that I blew it and didn't get back onto it. And so
Andy Frischella, who crafted this, is very adamant that it's not a challenge. It's a lifestyle.
It's a lifestyle. It's why afterwards you do live strong or live hard.
Yeah.
But so my reasoning behind it is one, there's some like obvious things that are obvious benefits from doing it. But I think the thing that is most important is I think that it instills a level of structure and discipline in your life, and it's a manufactured hardship that trains the brain to endure actual hardship when it comes, or to avoid doing some of the things that make you soft. And so for me, I realized that there are areas of my life where I kick ass. I'm very disciplined. I'm ambitious and driven, and on paper successful. But I think that there are other aspects of my life where I allowed myself to get soft. And when you have chefs and cleaners and all that kind of stuff, literally, there's a temptation there to kind of ooze in certain aspects of life and justify it. Yeah, literally. But there are aspects of life where you start to slip, even if it's unknowingly. If you're off 1 degree for long enough, you're miles off the destination. And so I think that whether it be, physically or it be, because I can be a specimen of a human. Like I'm a large dude. I'm a
It's true.
fairly muscular individual, and I'm very strong. But a degree off for 10 years, like I've allowed to happen, right? I do a lot of hard things, but I also will chill and coast for a bit. You find yourself pretty far off of where you used to be. And so there's an aspect of potential that I have not realized in certain aspects of my life that I would like to develop more discipline and resilience in. So that's why I'm doing it.
I am confident you will do it.
Thank you.
I think it will happen.
So how's this one going?
Sick.
Well, I'm 3 days in, so I'll let you know.
Going well, man. You're 1/27th of the way there. 28th? 1/28th of the way there.
Love it.
Good math. All right, man. Well, we'll cheer you along. We'll have to catch some of your milestones here on the Empty the Clip podcast. So
Let's do it, brother. That's
also super excited. Nobody cares about it now because the podcast is technically released in the future, but we're about to go live, right? So nobody knows right now. This is like number 6 in the hopper. We're about to hit the ground running, about to go live. Super stoked about that. More things coming. For those of you who've been tracking along from episode 1 until now, we got more coming. If you're joining us for the first time, oh man, it's just getting started. Oh yeah, we got things in the works. We got we got some stuff that's what is it? Stealth mode. We got some stuff in stealth mode. We got some swag coming that's going to be absolute fire. So
it'll be the best swag in B2B. I promise.
Ooh, that is a lofty claim, and I'm excited to achieve that. But yeah, no, we appreciate your time, appreciate your attention. Keep rolling with us. Again, our goal with this show is to make it fun and make you laugh, keep you engaged, but really it's just to bring value from the jump all the way through the show to people who are trying to blow up revenue, blow up their sales, increase conversion, whatever it is. We want to bring that value here to this show. We appreciate what you guys do by showing up. Check us out at I guess, is it your channel, Joey Gilkey, for the YouTube stuff?
No, dude. We'll figure that out.
Yeah, we'll figure it out. Joey Gilkey's YouTube channel and the apexrevenue.com. Or just keep listening to here every week for the weekly release of the Empty the Clip podcast. Later.
Pull up and empty the clip. Peace. Pull up and empty the clip. Pull up and empty the clip. Pull up and empty the clip. My shooters pull up and empty the clip. Reload that bitch.